Martha Koome has perfected the art of putting nothing on nothing with the expectation that he will yield something. Look, who is the chair of the senior bar? It's an individual who has held that office for more than 40 years. I'm 47. He has held that office for 40 years. It's an individual who was installed by the KANU government in the LSK politics. He's an individual who at one point in time wanted to yield over the powers of the Law Society of Kenya to the government then of KANU. These are individuals that you want us to hold in awe as those capable of fighting corruption? No, and we know them. I mean, and I have said these Ivy League lawyers will never lodge a complaint against a judicial officer. They have never. They will not. They sort out their issues quietly. In fact, they have a budget for corruption. So they cannot be the ones to lead the fight against corruption. That's number one. Let's go to the Law Society of Kenya. I can say without any fear of contradiction, unlike my council, which the government only purchased 8 council members, this council, to a large extent, has been purchased by the government. They have been emasculated, they have been occupied, they are incapable of confronting the judiciary. Yesterday, when the Chief Justice was boldly speaking about the right to assemble, picket, and demonstrate, she was with the president of the Law Society, she was with the PS Interior, yet I was at the Supreme Court having dropped about 3 council members to advocate for the need to stop gender-based violence. And then they were being tear-gassed and being shot at by the police. And the president of the Law Society was seated between the Chief Justice and the PS Interior. I mean, we're turning logic over its head. So, coming to the issue of dealing with corruption in the judiciary, they cannot deal with it. And to a large extent, the individuals at the helm of the leadership of the Law Society right now have never been to a courtroom. I can tell you, they've never appeared before the Court of Appeal, they've never appeared before the Supreme Court. The issues that Ahmed and I raise are issues that appear as if they are the narrative in the book of Revelations. They do not know. They do not have the wherewithal. What CJ Martha Koome has to do is to leave office. We will not take her to the Judicial Service Commission because she is the chair of the Judicial Service Commission. And this has been done before. We kicked out Bernard Chunga for corruption and incompetence. When Evans Gisheru was given the option to transit either to become a judge of the Court of Appeal and cease being Chief Justice or resign, he opted to resign. Chief Justices can never be taken through the process of the removal because they control the system. We want Martha Koome out.
And you mentioned corruption and incompetence in one sentence.
Yes.
Have the corruption aspects of that been substantially proven?
We've had lunch with my teacher, Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi. He has given me evidence of the corruption against those 4 judges, including the Chief Justice. Look, some of these things, if they are to be disclosed, the state will collapse. And a prudent Chief Justice should just leave office now, quickly, before embarrassing everybody in the Supreme Court, before embarrassing everybody in the judiciary. And then we will deal with these other teething problems, which cannot be dealt with when we have a Chief Justice who, if confronted with a complaint against a judge, confines herself in the cocoon of a doctrine they have coined called decisional independence. What is decisional independence? That is bullshit. A judge receives money, makes a decision against known principles of law, and when we forward this complaint to you, you tell us that is decisional independence. Martha Koome cannot sit in office right now when we are demanding transition to a better judiciary. She must leave.
And language is very important as well, just like in a courtroom. Therefore, moderation is very key. So the evidence you talked about, I'll come to you, Damas. And you are a lawyer, you have been practicing, you have been before judges of the High Court, the Court of Appeal, and the Supreme Court. In terms of the threshold assessment, is it something, if presented before the Judicial Service Commission, can kick Martha Koome out of office?
Oh, there's my officer.
Still you?
Yes.
Yes.
It is evidence. That
Why
is
not present?
I'll tell you this.
Because the assumption is if then you are pegging it that the state will collapse if this evidence is brought forward to the public limelight. The state is institutions that have been built over time. The Supreme Court in 2017 nullified a presidential election. The state never collapsed. Why not? Why is it so?
Ayub, I'll give you an example. You know, we had this purge when President Mwai Kibaki.
The Ringera Commission.
The Ringera Commission. You saw the effect it had on the judiciary. And for those of us who are in practice by then, we will tell you, court processes were not moving for an entire 2 years. You understand? The judiciary had come to a halt because then all the corrupted, incompetent judges, including the Chief Justice Bernard Chunga, had refused and stayed longer than necessary. And by the time Bernard Chunga was yielding ground and leaving, there was a state of disorganization. But let me put this to you. The Chief Justice cannot look us in the eye and say, bring evidence of my incompetence or corruption. The one of incompetence we've demonstrated, it's there. The one of corruption we have indicated. Look, we have a Supreme Court that decides to determine a dispute relating to a contract. Look, Ayub, even you who is not a lawyer, the clarity of the parameters of the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, they're quite clear. It's either a presidential election petition, a constitutional matter, or a matter of great public importance certified as fit for determination by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is taxing bills of costs, the work of a taxing master. That's corruption. And see, we need to dissuade ourselves of this notion that corruption entails me taking 100,000 shillings and giving to Chief Magistrate Duncan Okach or that's not the only definition of corruption. Corruption is anything that is improper, inappropriate, that leads to a procured judgment. And to close this matter, when Caesar's wife was facing divorce proceedings for adultery, and Caesar was asked to go and testify, I said, I will not testify. And I believe that is what informs Ahmed Nasser's perspective.
Yeah.
I will not testify because Caesar's wife is supposed to be above suspicion. The Chief Justice sits as Caesar's wife.
Yeah.
She must be above suspicion.
And why are you unable then to prove and bring forward that corruption allegation?
We are not unable. We are saying there is no forum that can try the Chief Justice because the Chief Justice is the damn forum.
So the option is seeking her resignation?
We need to get her out.
If she doesn't?
We will get her out.
How?
We'll get her out.